I have in my studio, first of all, I'm super excited to be in a new podcast studio. So I moved into a new house a couple of weeks ago. So I took a week off as we set things up. And it is just so awesome to be here with my kids. And it's just awesome. Be here with my family. And I've got a new podcast studio. It actually came with technical difficulties, but I got rural hard worker here that helped me out and did, let's just say, farm type tactics to get us going this morning. And it was really, really awesome. Let's just put it this way. An electrical penny, a penny is an electrical conductor. That's all I have to say. Okay. I am so excited to have Daaron Hamilton. He's a good friend of mine. And I want to make some introductions here first. First of all, you are on Secrets of Success podcast with Dr. Shane Needham, where our theme is never be outworked. And oh my gosh, I have a friend of mine, Daaron Hamilton, that is the exact example of the never be outworked. So stay tuned. You can call in. You can see the number below that's streaming, 1-877-995-2111. Call in if you have questions for me or for Daaron, because we're going to be talking about rural hard work and the value, or maybe not the value, of that college education is for everybody. We may even get into relationships today. He is a very wise friend. He has words of wisdom that are just almost unfathomable to me. So we'll maybe get into relationships as well today. So again, welcome to Secrets of Success podcast. You can find us on Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and also on iTunes, where all of those podcasts exist. This is episode number 20. I can't believe it. Started just a couple of months ago. And thank you to all of my fans out there and the viewers and the listeners. In the last just a little over a month, I have over 100,000 engagements on social media. Thank you very much. We have, let's just say, potential collaborations in the work. People are actually coming to me and saying, how can we work together? What can we do? We love your podcast. We love the topics. And obviously we started out to be, we do a lot of science podcasts, and we're going to be talking about some really cool things coming up. But I want to give a voice to people that may not have a voice. And for example, a voice of science to the non-science community, a voice of rural hard workers, or the never be outworked mindset, to the whole globe. We have people listening from Europe, from England, from Spain, from Brazil. I have friends all over the world that listen to this podcast, and a lot right here at home in the Palouse in Moscow, Idaho. So thanks again for joining me. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn, on all those platforms on social media. Do a Google search just of Dr. Shane Needham, and you'll find all my platforms. You'll also find my website at drsneedham.com, and all my content is there as well. And so thanks again for joining me. And Daaron, before I say what a pleasure, I want to say first, it is just a pleasure to have you, and a real honor. And we're going to be talking about that. So Daaron, let me just ask you to introduce yourself. Go ahead and introduce yourself. You can go back as far or as little as far as you want. I want to always give people a chance to tell their story, because our stories, as you know, my friend, are very, very important. So introduce yourself. Go.
Well, Daaron Hamilton, as Shane was saying, and I was fortunate to be raised by a dad who was very entrepreneurial, and so I've always kind of had that mindset, and so that's kind of been my life. There were a few years where I ended up having what a lot of people would consider a real job, but for the most part, most of my life has been self-employed. And fortunately for me, I guess most of my life has been involved with animals. And I'm one who seems to have a connection with animals. And I just seem to get along a little bit better with the animals than I do in the public sector. And so I started out being a horseshoer back, I don't know, we were talking last night and trying to figure it out. And it was probably pretty close to 30 years ago when I started doing some horseshoeing, and then moved to Yakima, got into sales, and spent, I don't know, 7-8 years in basically being in insurance sales and working for the Washington Farmer Stockman Insurance, and then started working in the funeral cemetery industry and in the pre-arrangement industry. And so that was a really good experience for me. But then I hit a wall where it was straight commission sales. And anybody that's ever been in sales, once you hit a wall, if you can't pull yourself out of that slump, it's time to move on. And I knew that it was time. I working in the corporate world, my bosses were in Bellevue, and even though I was doing very well in sales, they didn't like the idea that I wore cowboy boots.
Yeah, well, that's like, but I bet you made a lot of sales in the demographic you were with by wearing cowboy boots and a cowboy hat.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't wear the hat. I mean, I dressed the part. I wore a sport jacket.
Yeah.
But it all went.
And let me guess. And you wore the real blue jeans, correct?
No, you know what? I actually wore slacks that went with my boots.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, no. So I didn't look like a hick. It fit my personality, and it was good. And so I did well with it, but yeah, then I knew I needed to get back into being self-employed, where I was kind of in control of my own destiny.
Yeah. And so tell us, Daaron is a hoof trimmer. We're going to get into that in a little bit more in detail in a minute. So he trims hooves of dairy cows, and we're going to talk about that in more detail before we move on to his career, which is very inspirational to me. And I'm going to have several people on my podcast in the upcoming months and weeks about disrupting our educational system, because it's something that we have to do. Okay, so before I move on with Daaron, I want to talk a little about that. The value of trades in our society has diminished more and more every single year. We are losing more and more kids and non-students to trades that are afraid to go into the trades because society tells them that it might not be a good position or a good role. That we're really struggling in this country to find plumbers, electricians, hoof trimmers. And what I can tell you is I know I'm in the pharmaceutical industry. I always wanted to be a scientist. Obviously, I had to get some valued education, formal education. So I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry and also have a PhD in chemistry. That was just necessary for me. That is not going to work for everybody. And I have 4 beautiful children, and I tell them too that college isn't for everybody. Okay. But what I do know this is about Daaron and some of these other trades is, again, I own a company. I hire people. So I know, and I talk to a lot of people, and I know how much people make. And these kids in these trades, and Daaron right here is making a very good living for himself, better than, for example, people that I know at high levels in the pharmaceutical industry, for example. And I'm not saying everybody can be a hoof trimmer. Not everybody wants to be an electrician or a plumber, but I want to start that conversation of how do we get back to a society where these trades are acceptable. I want people to be able to work on my house. And so that's kind of going to be the theme. We're going to have a couple more people talking about disrupting education as well, because college isn't for everybody. It isn't for everybody. So, Daaron, before we move on to what a hoof trimmer is and all that, and we're going to show some pictures as well, you can describe them. I always like to ask people, because the most important part for me that I've realized over the last several years is my journey in life, whether it be in the pharmaceutical industry, my education, whether it be in bodybuilding. We're going to have some bodybuilders and bodybuilding coaches on in the next couple of weeks. Powerlifting, same with powerlifting. We're going to have some other guests on about powerlifting and weight training. It's the relationships that I've made. And then I guess we'd call it networking, but that's what's important to me. And in my new house, I'm excited to say that, I've had dinner guests over, I don't know, probably 10 people already in the last week. And it's been really, really cool to think about all those different facets of life that I've met people, whether it be through my education, through work, through lifting, through just friends, whatever it is. And it's been really, really inspiring to me. And it's just, it's a great thing. So, Daaron, I don't remember necessarily the first time we met. Why don't you describe the first time we met?
Shoot. I'm not 100% sure either.
Well, describe what you think.
We went to the same church.
Yeah.
And so it would have been during those times. I'm not sure. My life was chaotic enough that when...
Mine too.
yeah, when you moved, when you came into this area, but that's where. But I remember Shane and just his kindness to me, and like I say, I was going through kind of a brutal time in my life, and so yeah, that's my first memory of Shane Needham was just probably the biggest thing that pops in my brain was at a church convention and just having him come up, and he, even though we didn't really know each other that great, he knew who I was. He knew my name, and honestly, I didn't even know his name. I knew who it was, but a lot of friends, really good friends that are in common. But yeah, just a good guy and friendly. So that means a lot to you when you're going through hell.
Well, yeah. I think it was even when I was an undergraduate at Washington State University. I think we met at your brother and sister-in-law's house, and I think that was actually the first time we actually met. That's the first time I got to know you. So, when we kind of reconnected 10 years later, I remembered who you were and so on and so forth. And I always thought the same about Daaron. Very kind, very humorous, very, very funny, very entrepreneurial, very extroverted. I just like being around him. And so I love that connection. So some of that, that dates almost over 25 years or something.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
So Daaron was a horseshoer. Then he was in sales and several different types of jobs there. And then tell us what the next path of your career was like, and what was it that you were thinking? So, okay, I want to get out of sales. Why? What were you thinking? And then all of a sudden, I just love this story. Listen to this. He's like, I got to do something different with my life. And so he did.
Yeah. So you want the part where I shut off my radio?
Yeah, absolutely. All that. It's a great story. Yeah.
So
we were at dinner last night with some friends, and it was a beautiful dinner, by the way. And he was telling this story, and I was like, oh my goodness, what a great story. So please tell the whole thing.
So when you're in sales, I mean, you're always upward focused, just setting goals and all of that. And so anyway, I remember just wanting to. So I figured out as to what I wanted. I wrote down what I needed as far as a career went, kind of income I needed. I wanted to be able to drive a truck. Anyway, just the things that fit me as a person, fit my personality, fit what I wanted. And so I knew I wanted to get back into animals because, like I say, I just seem to do well with animals.
Well, and you grew up on the Palouse, so he grew up in a town, let's just say Colfax, not far from here, St. John, so they grew up in a farming community, very rural community, very small community. Like, how many people did you graduate with in high school, Daaron?
I want to say it was 80 was in our graduation.
That's actually not a small. That's not a small. I know that's small to a lot of people that I'm talking to right now, but that is not a small size. I mean, what St. John probably has 12. 20?
Well, they're crossed up with Endicott now, so I don't even know what theirs is. But yeah, they've combined some of the small towns out there.
So he grew up in a farming community, so he knew about animals. They raised livestock, knew about growing crops, all those things. So horseshoeing wasn't like a totally new thing to him. And wasn't one of your relatives a horseshoer?
No.
Oh, I thought your grandfather.
Well, my grandpa was kind of a cowboy. I mean, he always had horses.
Okay, and did he do his own horseshoeing then?
No.
Okay. All right.
No, I don't even remember seeing the process.
Interesting.
So yeah, we didn't have that many animals. We were more dirt farmers. I mean, we always had a steer, we had a milk cow, we had a donkey, we had a goat. It was kind of one of those funny farms, typical little funny farms. It was, we had a great life. So we always had a few animals around, but yeah, once I hit my wall and so I shut off my radio. And a lot of times we seem to, ask why is my life so sucky? Why is this happening to me? Why is, why me? Why? And
we play the victim.
Yeah, we play the victim.
And I know Daaron, that's not like him, but we all tend to do it. And the success depends on how quickly you get out of that victim box. And some people live in that victim box their whole lives.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just turned off my radio. And when I would drive around, it's like, why why is this happening? What do I need to change?
Yeah. Great mindset.
What do I need to become better at? Where do I need to grow? What do I need to do to achieve these goals that I have, to achieve the lifestyle that I need to achieve, that I want to achieve? So that, because I was, for all practical purposes, I was the sole income earner in our family. We had 3 kids, and I had the responsibility of providing. And so I needed to figure out how to achieve that next level. And so I was looking for, I knew that my body wasn't getting younger, and the horseshoeing game, where you're wrestling horses, basically, you have them laying on you and you're back there and they're kicking. And anyway, I knew that my body wasn't getting younger. So I needed to come up with something, a way to be able to keep myself safe and keep myself healthy, so that I could do it into later years. So I was looking for a chute to be able to put horses in, to be able to safely shoe them. But I was on Google.
So like the chute, it would like hold the horse. We'll show a picture of a chute here in a minute. But it would like hold the horse so he doesn't have to manhandle it, correct?
Yeah, because it's amazing how many people out there don't even have a decent post to tie a horse to, and they have no control over their horses. Their horses are just pasture ornaments out there until it's time to take them to the mountains or time to put shoes on them. So you're dealing with some pretty crazy animals.
Wow.
And so anyway, I could never find this chute to do horses in. I kept coming across this cow trimming chute. So I thought, if I could do horses, I suppose I could do cows. And at that point, I was living in central Washington, down Lower Valley, where there's a lot of dairies that should drive by, even though I knew absolutely nothing about dairies. I knew basically absolutely nothing about cows. And so anyway, probably a month before I became a hoof trimmer. So a hoof trimmer is what we're called when we do cows. A horseshoer does horses and a hoof trimmer does cows. That's the kind of the difference there. And so, like I say, probably a month before I became a hoof trimmer, I did not even know the career existed. And so started talking to the guy that builds the Riley built chutes down in Texas.
So you guys can all see this picture now. So describe what kind of cows need hoof trimmings and what you work on, and describe these pictures right here, Daaron. So this is Daaron in action being a hoof trimmer. And I didn't know this needed to be done, but essentially, if you like to drink your milk, you can thank Daaron for it. Because all dairy cows, I shouldn't say all, the majority of dairy cows have to have their hooves trimmed in order to basically produce milk. Is that correct, Daaron?
Yeah, all cows need to have their
all cows.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dairy cows are pushed a little harder feed wise because in order to put out milk, they're given grain and different things, which just make their hooves grow faster. And
they get like abscesses and stuff.
They get abscesses.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, that's why we primarily do dairy cows. The picture on the left there, I'm actually at the University of Idaho here in Moscow.
Go Vandals.
Go Vandals. There you go. And then the bottom right picture, I'm actually up out of OMAC doing some, they're called Aberdeen. They're kind of a half size Angus. And so I'm one of the goofy ones I've got such a heart for the animal. And so if people call me and their animals need trimmed, then have cows will travel. And so I go and take care of some different beef animals. Even though a lot of people don't feel like beef animals need trimmed, they too need trimmed. If they don't get trimmed, they'll break off. And it's kind of like your fingernails sometimes. If they don't always break off in the right place, and so it'll cause lameness. And so anyway, but it's primarily people who have the specialty animals or registered herds. They'll trim some of their breed stock. And so that's kind of but technically technically a dairy cow should be trimmed at least once a year. There's studies that show they should be trimmed twice a year for optimum, but if we can get them to trim them once a year, that's doing pretty good. So they're called dry cows. Before they go to have, typically it's kind of like a 3-month rest. They're called dry cows.
So describe this process of how you're trimming these hooves. And one thing I want you to absolutely know is any kind of dairy farmer, somebody who works on animals like Daaron, they love these animals and they care for them. This process is not hurting them; it's helping them. Okay, I want to be very clear on that, because some people, especially people that watch my podcast, that may not be from a rural area and they're from a metropolis or they're from a big city, they're not used to seeing animals like this. Period. They just see meat in the grocery store and they see milk in the refrigerators at the grocery store, and they don't know how it gets there. Well, there's a lot of work behind the scenes that a lot of farmers and ranchers have to do, and these people that have these skills that a lot of people aren't willing to have, to make sure that these animals are treated in a fashion so they can actually produce meat and produce milk. So describe this process and how you kind of describe it from where the cow comes up to you, Daaron, to the next process and what you do with it.
So most of the dairies that I'm at, the hired help, they separate the cows out for me. I don't have to separate out the cows. And
the ones that need trimmed or something?
Yeah.
And they just kind of, by looking at their hooves, they say, yeah, this one needs it or something?
Yeah. So
okay.
Primarily, a lot of what I do is lame animals. If they have abscesses, like Shane was talking about, if they have abscesses, there's another problem within the dairy, primarily in the dairy industry, but I also see it in the beef getting bigger, to be a bigger deal in the beef industry. They'll get what's called a hairy hoof wart. And it's just kind of a ugly lesion on their foot, and so we have to treat it because if an animal is lame, if a dairy cow is lame, they don't go to the feed bunk to eat, they don't go to the water trough to drink, and their milk production is determined by how much they eat. I mean, it's not completely determined by how much they eat, but if they're laying there in the corral rather than going up and eating or drinking, then their production falls off.
Yeah.
And once their production hits a certain low, then they have to beef them, because it is. So anyway, they bring me lame cows, or sometimes just long toes, and then I have myself set up there in a place, and I run them through my chute. The table, you see the table, it's in the up position right now. Usually, if I run a cow in, it's hydraulically operated. And so it's in the down position.
And then it leans the cow over automatically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's belly bands. There's belly bands that are laying on the ground. So the cow walks into my chute, and there's a head catch, and then I run the belly bands up, and I'm able to hydraulically roll it over, and I secure the legs, secure the feet. And then I use a 4.5-inch angle grinder that has a head on it that has 3 knife blades. And we do everything that you're taught not to do in shop class. You see my left hand there right on the ankle. And when we're trimming, that blade is literally inches away from our hands, but for the most part, we're able to stay safe. And so I trim it, and the process to trim, if it's just a maintenance trim, only takes a minute or 2. If there's lameness, it might take 10 minutes. But
and so describe that. So you're flipping through this magazine as you're looking for a chute for a horse, because you want to shoot so you can save your body and your health and so on and so forth. And now you see, oh, wow, hoof trimmers for cows. And describe that next process and your thought process. What were you thinking at that point?
I guess I was probably just thinking this. I knew I was thinking I can do this. And if I can do horses, then I can do cows. And so, I did. I was going down through Lower Valley, where that's where most of the dairies are. And I pulled into a dairy just to ask what they felt if there was a need for hoof trimmers. And the guy's like, hey, my kid's a hoof trimmer and he's back there trimming right now. Why don't you go talk to him? And we also, Shane and I have a mutual friend that was also in the dairy business. I'll mention this because it's considering the purpose of the podcast. So I called him before. He was the first person that I called to ask him if there was a need for hoof trimmers. And he said there's always a need for a good hoof trimmer. And I think that resonates. I do not care if it's a plumber, electrician, or what. Yeah. If you're going to do a good job, it does not matter the industry, because with the horseshoeing was always a really easy business for me to build. I would start building it. I think it was like 3 different times before I finally threw the towel. And it was an easy one because my little mantra that I would put on my sales, on my flyers that I would post up, was always on time and gentle with your cow, or gentle with your horses.
You know, and that's an interesting concept. We were talking about that at dinner last night. It's like, you know, if you just show up on time, that's a big deal. You just get your stuff done on time. And that's not with the flexibility nowadays of, I guess everybody being connected electronically. I think there might be maybe an issue with the up and coming generation of even knowing that exists. And we were talking about that last night, that the work ethic or the timing, it just might not be there. They want the ultimate flexibility without putting in the time. Hey, I wanted to be an entrepreneur as well. And I am an entrepreneur. Okay. And I get to live my own destiny like anybody can. That comes with a lot of risk and a lot of sacrifice. And so Daaron, talk about that. So when he started telling me, of course I'm a numbers guy, I'm a business guy. So he starts telling me, and we won't share any of this unless he wants to, because I don't want to give any of his competitors competitive information. But you know, he was telling me how much he gets paid per cow. And so how great a concept is that? The more you do, the more you make. And what was it? You did 150 cows once in a day?
Yeah, it was somewhere right. That was my biggest cow number day.
But now keep in mind, that was probably what, sun up and then past sundown?
Yeah.
Wow.
I get to that dairy. At that point, I was getting there at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was somewhere around 10 o'clock at night before I quit.
But that was a choice. You wanted to make that kind of money. You wanted to put your life on a trajectory like that, and you don't work like that anymore. So right now,
unless they break up.
Yeah. But you could work like that still if you wanted to.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing is with me, my focus has never been on money. My focus has been on taking care of the cow. Yeah. And if I take care of the cow is who takes care of the producer, and the producer is who takes care of me.
Absolutely.
So some guys have that all jacked up. You know, I've had them say, well, I can't believe you get paid that much for wrapping and blocking and blah, blah. I can't believe the dairymen pay you. But the reason they do is, I mean, pretty much every dairy that I ever started at, they're like, now okay, so maybe I should explain this. So if a cow they have the cloven foot. So if they have an abscess, say on one claw, then I use wooden blocks myself. Some guys use rubber, some guys use plastic, just personal choice. So we will I put that wooden block on the good claw. We use we glue it on, basically epoxy, so that it's removing some of the pressure from the side where the abscess is. So I would go to these dairies and the guy's like, now just block what has to be. So I would take pictures of everything that I blocked. And then at the end of the day, I would go to the dairy and say, okay, which ones would you not want me to block? Because then they're not just getting this huge bill at the end of the day going, holy crap, are you kidding me? My last hoof trimmer only put 3 blocks on. You're putting 20 blocks on.
Right. But it's great you took a picture of it to say, hey, this was probably going to be an issue, and you could show them that.
Yeah, it's then photo proof as to what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Right.
And so, because I'm one of those literal guys, I can't tell me what I need to block. Well, it's what I'm doing. I'm only blocking what I need to block. Right. And if you want to micromanage me, then you need to come stand there and say, yeah, put a block on that one. Don't put a block on that one, because I will stand there and go, do I do it? Do I not do it? Do I do it? Do I not?
Right.
So I know what I block. I know what I wrap. And if I don't know how to go outside of those lines. And
well, like any relationship, it's based on trust, even a business relationship. It's like, and well, I'm sure once they got used to you and how you, and they could trust you, then they have ultimate confidence in you. And it's like, they don't even question it at all.
Yeah. There's customers that I took from other hoof trimmers that were actually friends with the dairyman, but I took the business from them. And when the other hoof trimmer went back to that guy and said, he's like, why'd you keep him? Why did you basically hire him and get rid of me? And he's like, well, guess the cows get better. And he doesn't know the difference between my trimming and the other guys, but they get better.
Right. And it's based on results.
Yeah.
And that's being an entrepreneur. It's like, that's being in business. It's like, it's based on results. When you can provide any value, whether it be a product or a service that has value, somebody will pay for that. And it's, how do you get value? By showing results, period.
When I would come into a new area, because when I got started, it was brutal. I canvassed the entire state of Washington.
So you were cold calling, right? You're knocking on doors, calling. I
had brand new paint on my chute. I knew nothing about cows.
So talk about the training that you got, because you decided to make this. You decided, hey, I'm going to be a hoof trimmer, and then you'd never done it before. But you said you in your mind you said, but I can do it.
But I can do it.
I can do it. So what's the next step?
So I went to Minnesota, and the training was literally 6 days worth of training. But the thing that I've seen in this business, it doesn't matter if you have 30 years of trimming or if you have 6 days of training. You either have it or you don't. You have a knack, you have a work ethic, you want to do the right thing for the animal. And so it doesn't, time doesn't matter as much as your heart, in all honesty. And I think that's probably the case with most occupations. If there again, it gets back to the money. If you're focused on the money, there's been a lot of hoof trimmers come into the business that are focused on the money, and they never last, because I know guys that have quit hoof trimming in the middle of the day to go to town to get something to drink.
Right.
Get lunch.
If you love it, then it's going to make it a lot better. And that's how I feel too. It's like, I love my career. It's like, I love what I'm doing. I wouldn't want to do anything else. And so
I may have got off track there on your question. So tell me your question again, Shane.
Well, so you got 6 days of education in Minnesota. Yeah. And that's just like specially for hoof trimming, correct?
You're in that training. It was pretty brutal training.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to figure, I went from wearing a sport jacket, and I'm not a very big guy. I'm small build. And so the guy that trained me, it's kind of funny because he had absolutely zero confidence that I was going to make it as a hoof trimmer. And even the guy that sold me the chute, because they kind of look at it as a big man's occupation, because I was told that I was going to have 10 years in the business before my body broke down and I wouldn't be able to trim anymore. Well, I'm 19 and a half years. And it was maybe 6-8 months ago when I did the 150 cow days. So it's not, and people will say, oh, well, I would like to see that 150th cow. Well, with my cows, I don't think you're going to see a difference, because I've had many conversations. We were talking about this again last night also, where I've had to have the conversation where I'm tired and I want to start cutting corners, but I have the conversation with myself. It's like, Hamilton, if you're not going to do the job and you're not going to do it right, then get out of the business. And so yeah, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a difference between my last cow and my first cow, because
Wow.
but there again, it comes down to never be outworked. I was going to say that too. Um, when I would go into an area, I would learn my competitors. I probably knew their hoof trimming better than they did. I knew their flaws.
Yeah.
And when I would go into a place, I knew it didn't take me long to know as to their flaws. And so, yeah, when you know your competitor's flaws, you're gonna outdo them.
Yeah.
You're gonna outperform them. And so
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter. It didn't take long to wear the paint off my shoe.
Wow, that's a great story. But you had to do what any entrepreneur does. I mean, you had to beat the streets, cold call, try to get clients, and you built up a reputation. You even described last night that you basically you would go to some dairies and say, "Hey, give me a shot. Give me your 5 worst cows, and I'll treat them for you." And that was how you got your in with them, correct?
Yeah, that was how I got most of my ins.
Wow.
Give me your garbage that the other guys are struggling to fix. And then that gave them an opportunity to see the kind of work that I did and to see that, the cows. There's some hoof trimmers that, like I say, they've been doing it for a lot more years than I have. And they bounce from this dairy to that dairy to that dairy to this dairy, and they're still bouncing around. And I have an absolute excellent customer base at this point. I mean, I have the schedule that I absolutely love. I have a to die for schedule right now, and I've got a customer base that is to die for. They're loyal to me. They trust me. I think part of the reason that I've had the success, well, I know a big part of the reason why I've had the success. Anybody out there who has to deal with employees knows that it's kind of a headache. And so I'm one small piece of that dairy puzzle, that multi-million-dollar operation puzzle that they do not have to worry about. They know if I say I'm going to be in there Wednesday at 6:00 in the morning, I'm going to be there at 6:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And they know it does not matter how many cows they pull me. I'm going to trim those cows, and I'm going to do the best job that I possibly can. And that was one of the other things that I'll mention too while I'm in this. So I figured getting into this business, anybody can trim a cow. If you could be trained to trim a cow in no time. But what separates the really good hoof trimmers from the not so good is what kind of job do you do on the lame cows? Because, well, hey, you better not be laming cows, and some guys still do that. They lame cows. But so if you don't lame cows and you can trim a cow, then what kind of job do you do? So my goal was to be the best lame cow hoof trimmer in the area. And if somebody was better than me, then I would go watch them. But
That's awesome. So to make a very good living, I'm just going to say that it's a very good living. He's told me his numbers, and I'm proud of him. I'm impressed with it. Let's see, you didn't have to spend $30,000 a year for 4 or 5 years in college, Daaron?
No. So you go and you have 6 days worth of training, and you come back, and like I say, if you do a good job, if you do a decent job, and you're going to know before you come out of training, if you do a decent job or if you don't do a decent job, you're going to learn. You're going to get better at identifying, at finding the little problems, rather than them having to be brought back in a week or brought back in 2 weeks. You don't have. I wasn't Personally, I'm not one that's really built for school. I was not a great student in high school. I was not a great student. I did go to 1 year of college, but it just, some kids are not built that way. I have a crazy touch with animals. I don't understand it, but it's just one of those gifts. And I can create stuff. I can, if there's a problem, I can figure out how to fix the problem. But so I can build stuff. But as far as sitting me down and making me read a book and then go take a test from it, it's just not my technique, my finer point.
Well, it's awesome that you figured out a way to make a great living and you love it. I mean, it's obvious. That's why you've been doing it for 20 years and you love to be around animals and even the people that you work with and your flexible schedule that you created. What you have is you created. So you talk about, having a flexible schedule and great clients and so on and so forth. Again, you created that. I mean, that's and that's what entrepreneurs do. They create a life for themselves but anybody can do that. Our own destiny is always controlled by us. We can control our effort and our attitude, and those are the things we control. So we're going to now segue into something a little bit different as we get to the 3/4 point on this podcast. So Daaron, being a hoof trimmer, he is obviously very detailed at what he does. He's very good at what he does. Obviously, he does that job pretty much with a cow and himself. That's pretty much it. So he has lots of time to think and process things. And when we reconnected, in the last year, we hadn't connected for a while, and we reconnected in the last year. And he had gone through some relationship issues, and he can probably talk about that if you'd like to. And I was awed by his wisdom. I mean, I've done everything. I've done therapy personally. I've done executive coaching. I still have those things happening. I've done, all kinds of self-help, and those things have all helped, right? And then I start talking to this hoof trimmer who has no formal education, and I'm like learning more from him than I've learned through all of these books and these expensive coaches that I have and therapists and so on and so forth. And by the way, and I've been pastored, all those things. And I have great friends that pastor me too. And so I think it's great to be surrounded by good people. But how do you want to segue into relationships and how you think it affects your whole life, Daaron?
Oh boy, how do I segue into that? Relationships. I believe that we were put on this planet for relationships. And I guess that's a good segue. It's the relationships that have created my success in hoof trimming. Because if I did not have that relationship with my dairyman, if I did not have the work ethic that matches their work ethic, if they could not trust me, because hoof trim is a really easy job to write down cows that you never trimmed or just run cows through that you didn't trim. She doesn't need it. I'll just trim this foot. If there was not that relationship that was built on trust, then I wouldn't have the success that I have today. And the other thing is, so on the personal level, the relationship that you have at home determines a lot of your success that you have in your job. Because even when I was in sales, my marriage was hard. I mean, there was nothing. It was a 23-year marriage, but there was absolutely nothing. I hate to say it, but there was really very little that was very easy about it. So I'd go to work and I'd get beat up, and I'd come home and it'd just be that stress. And because in sales, you take a lot of abuse. I mean, when you're cold calling, we would tear a phone book page out and we just go down and cold call and get appointments. And I had to be really good when I got inside the people's home, because I hated the cold calls. So I had to I had to make the sale when I was in the person's home so that I could, make a living. But anyway, so that's what I believe, that there's 4 areas of our life that we're going to become desperate in one of these 4 areas. It's going to be with our kids. It's going to be with our relationship. It's going to be with our health, or it's going to be with our money. And so my big, my big area was relationship. I was comfortable with everything else.
And you're talking about specifically relationship with your wife, correct?
Yeah, because your marriage relationship is your primary relationship. That is the relationship that determines your relationship with your kids. That's the relationship that determines your relationship with your money. That's honestly the relationship that determines your relationship with your health. Yeah. They are all connected, 100% connected. And so the worse my marriage got, the worse my health got, the worse everything got. Everything was tanking. And so fortunately with the hoof trimming, it was more determined upon my own personal work ethic and my relationship with my customers. And so I could still go to work, but where it is, as Shane was saying, just me and the cow. I am there sometimes, and I was basically living on the road at that point. I would go home on the weekends, so it was just me, the cow, and the devil's in my head. And so it got to a point where it was destroying me from the inside out, because so I remember being in high school, going to a Zig Ziglar, and those of you that know anything about sales and motivation, he's kind of one of those original gurus. And so there again, going back to my dad would listen to that kind of stuff. He would take us to those kind of seminars. And so I had a lot of experience with the motivational, but I was listening to self-hypnosis stuff at night when I was going to sleep. I was doing all the mantras. I was doing all the self-help. I've never gone to any counselor. Counseling never, because honestly, I've never seen where it worked that well.
There's some research into that.
Yeah, people go to counseling and they keep going to counseling, and you keep going to counseling, and you're still jacked up.
Right. Yeah, until again, Darren and I have been talking a lot about this. Until you're willing to get out of that victim box, you can hear Darren talking that, and I think I know where this is going. I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but you can hear him talking how his relationship with his spouse, he was trying to fix it. There were devils, he was meditating, he was probably praying about it. You were doing everything possible to try to make that better. Is that correct, Darren?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so keep describing that process, and then what finally happened, and now where are you, and how do you see the world different now?
Yeah. So I was down, there's a big dairy down in Boardman, Oregon, I was trimming at, and it was my born again moment. We can talk about being born again when we're baptized or whatever as Christians, but I was down there, and obviously I must have gotten to a stage in life where where God finally knew that I was desperate for help. And because everything was crashing in my world. And so it was an audible voice. Obviously it must not have been audible, but it was an audible voice from, I believe, God. And it just said, Darren, you're a man, husband, father. You do your part and let me take care of the rest. And at that moment I said, okay. And when I said, okay, it was a moment where, God, you say jump and I say how high. And so from that moment on, so for the last, that was 13 years ago, this October, it'll be 14 years. So from that moment on, there has not been anything that God could ask of me that I would not say, okay. And so when I got back to my motel room that night, it's like, okay, this is great and dandy, but I still have a really bad marriage, and I don't know how to fix that problem. So the first thing I had, no, I mean, I was kind of a lousy Bible student even up to that point. I was more into this, the self-help. I did a lot of, and so I saw a complete disconnection between, the Bible and the self-help side. But so I get back to the motel room and it's like, Daaron, you have to love your wife. That is your place as a husband, is to love your wife. That's really one of the few things that the Bible says that we need to, in regards to a husband toward his wife, you have to love her. It's like, how do I love her? It's kind of toxic. Well, you got to forgive her. Well, you got to love her before you can forgive her. And so it's just this circle. You got to forgive before you can love. You got to love before you can forgive. So anyway, I had made the commitment. You ask it and I will do it. So I forgave her. So when I forgave her, a serious back problem vanished. It was taking me an hour to get out of bed, to get my carcass out of bed and to get my boots on. And then I'd have to go to work. And I'd have to set up my gates. I've got 5 gates I set up around me. They're over 100 pounds. And with this back that is just, and painkillers don't touch my back problem. When it's that kind of a back problem, painkillers don't touch it. And so there was nothing that I could do except wait for the next day and it would all start back over again. And so when that back problem vanished, it's like, hey, this is pretty cool. Just by forgiving my wife. So then I started studying. Because I had found that anything in the self-help world that worked, it has a biblical background to it. I don't care if you're a Christian or not. If it works in science, if it works in the self-help industry, it works in the Bible.
And there's lots of proverbs that are sometimes, when you hear the self-help stuff, it's like, wow, that's very close to a proverb.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. So what, okay. So that was 13 years ago and you forgave, your health started getting better. What's the next step? Because you still remained in the relationship for quite a while after that, correct?
Yeah. I remained in the relationship for probably another 9 years.
Yeah.
But I don't know how this fits in, but I was raised that divorce was wrong. Yeah. And so
you were scared of divorce.
Yeah. So I was petrified of divorce. And even though I'd spent those 9 years or whatever, really studying basically if there was a subject that was a problem in my life, I would study it. I would pull every verse out of the Bible and that was in regards to, I don't care if it had to do with money, if it had to do with fear, if it had to do with guilt, shame, it did not matter. I've got in my phone, I've got crazy amount of studies that I did just to try to gain an understanding on why is my life. Okay. So there again, so as children, one of the things that's kind of annoying with a lot of children, but it's like, why, Dad, why, Mom, why is that happening? Why? Well, we can ask the question to our Heavenly Father of why me, slump, and why me? Why does my life suck? Or we can ask why me? And so that's what I did. So that's what hoof training has given me for the last 13 years is I have asked really deep questions of God. Why is this happening? And so that's honestly what Shane recognized in me. He recognized a different depth that is in me, but it's come from 13 years of standing there at the chute rather than asking, why me? Why does my life suck? Yeah. Why me? Why does my life suck? But we're going to make it better. And so
what happened? So like 3 or 4 years ago, you decided that, the marriage was just going to work and you just you decided to get a divorce. Is that
I
correct?
faced my fear.
Yeah.
Basically, the final study that I had to do was, is divorce wrong?
Well, and in Darren, in Darren's family and the church that he grew up in, and I'm very familiar with it, is that divorce is just a taboo subject. It's murder is probably better than divorce. I mean, I'm a little bit, crazy on that one, of course, but divorce is just not something that you do. And I think Darren, I'm not putting words in his mouth. I don't agree with divorce either. It should be like a last ditch effort. But if two people are not willing to work on a marriage and there is a break in the covenant, many ways to break that covenant, then it has to be an option. And I think God, and Darren has some examples in this. We won't get into the biblical part of it, but God gives reasons for that too. And so that you can get a divorce and that it is okay. And I don't judge my friends that have gone through that. And in fact, I love them even more, and I'm more proud of them because it's a very big step to take. So Darren, you get a divorce.
Yeah.
What happened to your life after that? Let's just say you seem a lot different.
Yeah, no. My life, once I became clear that I could get divorced and could get remarried, then I was able to walk out. I mean, a lot of people, when they walk out of their marriages, they have a lot of guilt, they have a lot of shame, they have a lot of fear, they have a lot of anger. I walked out of that relationship. So part of that whole journey was, once I had the experience with my back, then I started searching my life for every person, every situation that I needed to forgive. And then once I cleared all that stuff up, people can say, "Oh no, Jesus died and we're already forgiven." Well, that's fine. But if you really want to heal your life, you're going to discover that no, you still have to. He gave you the ability to forgive, but you have to forgive. You have to do the forgiving. He shed his blood. So anyway, not to get too deep into that, but which I told you I sometimes
that's okay.
So anyway, then I know we have to repent and we have to submit. Forgive, repent, submit. That has been my life for the last 13 years, searching for everything that I had to. And so anyway, when I walked out of my marriage, I walked out of it I had no guilt. I had no fears. I had no shame. It was just, I was a free man. I mean, my ex, she's not a bad woman, and I don't want to imply that at all, because she is. I mean, she tries her best with the kids. I mean, I can't complain about her in all that. We just could not make a relationship work. And so if you can't make a relationship work, then it's goofy to stay in it, move on, and find somebody that you gel with. Because like I say, we are here for a relationship. And anyway, I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you absolutely did. Now, what I see, so you said forgive, repent. What was the other one?
Submit.
Okay, forgive, submit. So that's all great. Obviously, he's done that. What I see on the outside is he is living a new life. And so what I want to kind of end up here is, and Darren and I were in Moab, and we a month ago or so, a couple months ago, and we were doing rock climbing on a Jeep, and there were lots of fears involved, and we threw all those aside and just did it. And it was a great journey. And a lot of people stay in poor relationships because of fear. And what I've seen with Darren is once you are able to overcome that fear, to get rid of unhealthy relationships. And I'm not just saying a marriage. I'm saying some people are friends with people who let them treat themselves poorly. Sometimes as adults, we have relationships that are poor with our parents or are poor with our siblings, and we allow them to treat us a certain way. Once you remove that fear of, oh my gosh, somebody's not going to like me, or somebody's going to judge me because I'm not going to be married, or I'm going to be divorced, or I'm not going to like my brother or my sister or whatever, your life takes on a whole new meaning. And it just, your horizons just expand. And it's something that I think why Darren and I reconnected is because we're both on this relationship path of trying to remove all of the toxic relationships in our lives. And I can tell you the last year, and I can see the difference in my children as well. It has been an expanding universe for me. And so it is a great journey to not have that fear, to take those steps to, it was a big step. I mean, you probably were feeling all kinds of feelings, shame, fear, sadness, some happiness as well, probably, also probably some anger, yeah. So all 5 feelings he was experiencing, and he still did it. And that is really amazing, Daaron. And so we're going to wrap this up, but we might come back with Daaron and another female guest at the same time and talk about relationships, because we think that and there's lots of science involved in relationships as well over the past 10 or 20 years. And so thank you guys for being great fans, great viewers, great listeners. Keep listening. Hey, I love the 100,000 in a month, 100,000 engagements. Let's make it 200,000 next month. This is just incredible. Collaborators, keep reaching out. We will make a deal soon. I really appreciate all your guys' interest. Again, find us on Spotify, on iTunes, on SoundCloud, and also on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel as well. So just Google Dr. Shane Needham on any of those platforms and you will find it. Just visit my website at drsneedham.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook. I can already see more people started following me because of this podcast. And Daaron, a big thank you. What an honor to have you. My first guest in my first in my house here, new house that I moved into, in my new podcast room. And thanks for helping me set it up. And let's say this making the farmer fix for sure. Yeah. We wouldn't look like this right now if it wasn't for Daaron. I know how to jerry rig some things. And it worked. And it worked. Daaron, thanks again for being a great guest. And anyway, find us online and keep following us. And thank you for a great show. Thank you very much.